It's a pleasure to follow Baroness Jones of Musselcombe. Guess what? I'm going to argue the opposite. My lords, Dame Sarah Gilbert received a well-deserved standing ovation at Wimbledon for her pioneering work on vaccines today. And I echo those cheers and that standing ovation. But to note that that achievement of the vaccine required experimentation on monkeys and mice. So I want to oppose those amendments, a whole range of them from 97 to 297 and in between, because one way or another they seek to make animal testing ever more regulated. And there's even an inference by positing it within an animal welfare context and with this emphasis on the last resort, that this vital part of scientific research is somehow a necessary evil that should be abolished and morally dubious. The UK's system of regulating animal testing and experiments is already the tightest in the world, and researchers complain that they can only obtain licences if they clearly demonstrate that there are no alternatives, and some have to wait so long to secure approval for small amendments to research licences that the research becomes outdated and has to be abandoned. The whole field is too heavily bureaucratised, in my opinion, but certainly no more bureaucracy is needed. And I'm worried already about the bill without it being tightened up by these amendments. I've long felt queasy about the reduce and replace elements of the 3 Rs. Endless attempts at placing restrictions on the types or numbers of animals used in experiments can, I fear, only stifle medical and human safety progress and its positive benefits for humanity. So for the record, and I know it's medical research, but I want to remind people of the kind of benefits we mean. The use of dogs to extract insulin to treat diabetes. Experiments on armadillos that help develop a cure for leprosy. The wonder drug, Levadura, used on people with Parkinson's. And if you know anyone who's had that disease and taken that drug, you will know what a wonderful gain it is. But it wouldn't have been developed without the insights gained from research involving animals. And think of it, my lords, a world without pacemakers, heart transplants, open heart surgery, safe anaesthetics, polio vaccines, cancer treatments that mean survival rates have doubled over the last 40 years. So many people alive today, in fact so many people here in this chamber, are only here because of animal research's role in the battle against nature and natural diseases. And that's even before we talk about COVID vaccines. So I think that reducing the use of animals in testing or in medical science would be a backward step. The truth is that we are to fully understand, for example, and find more treatments for COVID-19, it will not be less but more animal research that we need to do. Not a reduced number of animals, but the use of multiple species and lots of failed experiments, which some people will say is a waste, but that's what will eventually mean that we find answers and cures. As outlined in Nature magazine recently, monkeys and mice tell researchers different things about infection, shedding light on factors such as the immune system and how the virus spreads. And whether it's testing on toxins or testing on any kind of in whatever the testing is for, I think we have to say that this is wondrous stuff of human ingenuity, of life-saving problem solvers, and it should be celebrated and encouraged. Instead, there's a faintly misanthropic whiff to this constant demand to reduce animal research, as well as a focus on animal welfare rather than human welfare. We all know how animal rights activists have adopted an anthropomorphic language to discredit animal research. Mice are tortured, pigs are sacrificed, dogs are mutilated. We've heard about barbarity today. This leads to a narrative of scientists portrayed as though they get perverse pleasure in sadistically experimenting on animals. I'm not trying to sugarcoat vivisection or this kind of testing. I know that it involves gore and ultimately destroying animals. But this is not wanton animal cruelty, but is driven by a desire to save human life and have a safer society. That's why I've so objected over the years to the way that these scientists and researchers and research institutions and chemical companies and pharmaceutical companies, whether private or public, have been vilified and harassed named and shamed in a culture of fear. But these scientists and researchers should have nothing to be ashamed of. Indeed, I would want not only to reject these amendments, but also to go on the offensive about the moral good of research on animals. And if Sarah Gilbert deserves a standing ovation, so do they. And I rather feel these amendments are a bit of a dispiriting, slow hand clap. So, my lords, to finish, let's not get muddled up here. We shouldn't allow rhetoric about animal welfare to stand in the way of human welfare and the alleviation of human suffering, or to make the world safer. Some may think this human-centric, unsympathetic to animals, but rather I am worried about affording a moral equivalence between animals and humans, and I refute the caricature that this equates to indifference to animals. This bill inevitably, as it pays attention to wildlife with its focus on biodiversity, has a focus on animal protection policies, and that means our gaze is on animals. But we must resist seeing issues through an animal rights framework that upgrades and exaggerates the capacity of animals, while logically and philosophically downgrading and diminishing the agency and consciousness of humans, capacities that animals do not possess. This careless interchangeability between human and animal rights and capacities has been raised as a problem in relation to the Animal Sentience Bill by a number of noble lords. So I hope the Minister and the Government will reject these amendments and, without rehearsing Cartesian dualism, note that it is precisely human consciousness that allows us to legislate about how we should better organise our relationship with the natural world, and also allows us so much progress and scientific innovation so necessary to much in this bill and vital to a post-COVID prosperity and health.